Okay, so if you're here for the workshop, we're going to get started. Fina, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. And can everybody in the room hear me okay? Awesome. So, okay, so you all know me then. My name is Maddie, and I'm a fellow at the ERC. And in this workshop, we will learn how to find and explore US Census data from a variety of sources. And we'll learn to find both modern and historic census data. And we'll also learn a few strategies for finding census data from other countries. So we use a few different examples of questions that you might be researching and need data for. And for this workshop, you can use a lab computer or your own personal computer. First, I'll go to the ERC website and show you all, in case you're not familiar. So that's erc.barnard.edu. And this shows you on the Visit Us tab which fellows are working what days and what times, so you can get help with any questions that you might have about data analysis or software or finding data. And this list shows you all of the fellows' skills as well. And over in this workshops tab, you can also find resources for workshops that ERC hosts like this one. So before we dive right in, I want to talk a little bit about some background about the census and what the census is. So we're all kind of familiar with the census, I think, if you've lived in the United States during a decennial census year, for sure. And the census is used for representation. So how many seats in the House of Representatives, how many electoral votes the state has, that all depends on the population of the states. And it also impacts the funding. So how much federal funding areas will receive for things like infrastructure, schools, and welfare programs. And they're also used for districting, so electoral districts, which obviously has really important implications. And they help communities to make decisions based on where the population is located. So some challenges of conducting the census that we want to be aware of. There are people who have more than one address, people incarcerated in correctional facilities. So people might be listed in the location of the correctional facility and not in their home location. And people who live in different addresses at different times of the year, or those who don't have an address, like unhoused individuals. Non-English speakers may be have a challenge filling out the census, and undocumented immigrants might not feel comfortable. So there's a lot of politics associated with the census, and it's important to be aware of the limitations of this data, even though we often talk about it as if it's really infallible and super precise. So now that we've talked a little bit about some background about the census, let's look at how we find census data. And first, we're going to find some modern US Census data. So let's imagine that we're trying to find information on uninsured people in the state of Florida. So that's going to be our sample research question. We want to see where the most uninsured people are and how this correlates with COVID rates, because uninsured people can face higher costs at hospitals and are less likely to receive preventative care. So we're going to download data about uninsured people from a few different sources. And first, we're going to use the US Census Bureau website. And you can access that by opening a browser and going to data.census.gov. So the main element on this page is a search bar where you can search for census tables, maps, and specific variables. So we're going to simply start by searching uninsured, which is our topic, and Florida, which is the area of interest. And the first result we get is a statistic. So we just get automatically the total percentage of Florida residents without healthcare coverage. And this could be a fast and simple way to find some quick demographic statistics for reference if you need that for a paper or a project. So that's one use of the census website. And then next we see a list of census tables that contain healthcare information from the census. We can also see maps of the uninsured population. And scrolling down a bit more, there's some pages which are informational articles on this topic. And on the left is this filters section, which these filters limit our search. So filters with a padlock symbol, like Florida over here, this comes from the search. So this can be removed only by changing the search. And then down here, we can add new filters and limit the search more by geography and years and topics. But going back up to tables, this first result looks pretty close to what we want. So it's selected characteristics of health insurance coverage in the United States. So I'm going to click on this one. And underneath the table, we can see a drop-down menu that currently says 2020 ACS 5-year estimate subject tables. And if we click the drop-down, there are also 1-year estimates for each year. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what the American Community Survey is, ACS, and the difference between 1- and 5-year estimates. So while the decennial census is conducted every 10 years, the American Community Survey is also conducted by the US Census Bureau, but it's conducted every month of every year. And the decennial census counts every single person in the US, but the American Community Survey is sent to only a sample of the population. And finally, the decennial census asks basic demographic questions because it's really just looking for, who is every single person living in the United States. The American Community Survey asks a wide variety of social and economic questions. And these 1-year estimates are conducted only for areas with populations over 65,000, so larger urban areas. And the 1-year estimates are more current versus the 5-year estimates, which are conducted for all areas. And while they're a bit less current because they span 5 years, they're more reliable because of that larger sample size. So I'll go back to the census website. And this table also contains some more variables than just the total uninsured population. So we can see we have the age of people in Florida, so we have the uninsured population and it's broken down by age and race and sex and living arrangements, all these different characteristics. In the notes tab up here, we can see metadata, which is information about how the data is collected and reported. So metadata can include general descriptions about what's in a file, definitions for some of the terms, and maybe information about the quality of the data. You would probably find that here, so it can be important to look at. And metadata files can also be known in other sources as a data dictionary or a code book. Next, looking at this geo tab. So this currently says 1 geo, which is the state of Florida. So it's kind of all of our geography limits that we're looking at. And so right now what we're looking at in all of these numbers is estimates total amounts for the entire state. But if we want to compare to different areas of Florida, we would want to see maybe all the counties or break it down a little bit further. So to do this, we'll click on Geo. And this gives all of the options for geographies within the state. So the most common geographies are listed at the top, and we'll choose county. And then we'll choose Florida and all counties within Florida. And we can close this window now because this is what we wanted. Or if you wanted, you could use this back arrow and select another state and add in more states and all the counties for those states as well. So scrolling through the table, you can see that it shows raw numbers and a percentage. And now this table just got a lot bigger because I have a lot more counties in it. You can turn off this margin of error if you're not interested in that by clicking this button here. And before downloading this data, the census data platform actually allows us to visualize it in a map immediately, which could be really helpful for knowing what the patterns are in the data and what you might expect before going all the way and bringing it into GIS or another data analysis platform, whatever your next step is. So on the right toolbar, you can click on this map button. Depending on the size of your window, you might need to click more tools first and then map. And now we get an automatically generated map of total population by county in Florida. That's the variable that appears automatically here. But this isn't actually the variable that we're interested in. So to change the variable displayed, I'll click on this variables button at the top and then click on this drop down. You can scroll through here, all the variables, but since there's a lot, I'm going to do the search. I'm going to search for percent insured. So here it is. Use this percent insured civilian non-institutionalized population estimate. So now the map automatically updates and we can see a map of the percentage of uninsured residents by county. And it looks like, looking at this, maybe some of these counties that are most insured are in the kind of north part of the state. Some of these counties that are the least insured are more in the south. So maybe that's a pattern that I would want to investigate more. And if we decide that we want to see data beyond the state of Florida, we can use the select tool and simply select these counties. So now it adds these counties to the map. And with the layer tool, I exit the select tool. Here we can change the geography level to a different one. Under style, we can change which boundaries appear. So you can add other boundaries on top of this map. If that's something that you're interested in for visualization, it won't change how the data is broken down, but could be useful for reference. And under colors, we can change the color ramp. And in classes, you can also change the number of categories that the data fall into and where they are divided. We'll keep all of these for now. So going back to the table, I'll click go to full table here. So you can see it's pretty simple to switch back and forth between this table and the map by clicking the map button or the table button. And you can see that if you change the selected geographies on the map, the table also changes. So to return to all the counties within Florida, you can click the little X next to these Georgia counties, and everything else looks like it should be for Florida, but I can also check view here. And I'll just clear all of these by clicking the checkbox up here and clear selected. Everything except for all counties within Florida. And so now I'm back to all counties within Florida. Perfect. So we can now download this data as a CSV, Excel, or zip file on the top right. And if you're using the data in GIS software, definitely use the zip download option because this gives you GeoIDs that can be joined to spatial files. And I'll talk a little about that later. But I'll click on this zip option, and we wanted the ACS 5-year for 2020. So now I'll click download CSV. It looks like it downloaded. So on a Windows computer, to extract the zip files, you'll have to click on this pink tab and click extract all. This won't be necessary if you're on a Mac. So I'll just save it to my downloads folder. Okay, so the first file included here, which we'll click on, this is your main data file. So you can see it has the ID, the GeoID, the name of the geography level, so all the different counties. And then we have all of the variables here about the uninsured population. And you'll notice that this second row has descriptions of the variables that appear in the first row. The other file in this zip folder is called the metadata file.
I think I was the question. Yeah, no, you just answered it. I was just
Okay,
going to ask where
perfect.
the data documentation for the table was.
Yeah, feel free to stop me if there are any other questions. So this metadata file also has all of the names of the variables with a description. So if you're bringing this into a different software, you might want to delete this row just so you don't have a duplicate of your column names. Okay, so yeah, any other questions about downloading data with the US Census Bureau? What we've covered so far. Okay, so when you bring census data into GIS, you also need shapefiles or spatial data files to match the data to. And the Census Bureau has another website for this that's specifically for census data with the specific geographic boundaries, which it refers to as tiger line shapefiles. And usually just find this by searching tiger line shapefiles. And it's going to be the first result. So now we get to this website with different census years, and we'll stick with 2021. And we'll click on web interface. And again, you have to select a year, and this dropdown gives you options for the geography type that you're downloading. So since we just downloaded some data on Florida counties, I'll click counties and equivalent here and click submit. So this allows you to download a file for the entire United States. Depending on the geography level that you click, for example, if I click census tracts, you can select for a particular state. One limitation about this is it will only let you download these geographies within the state or within the country. So if you're only looking for a particular area, you will have to limit the geography selection in GIS. And if you come to the ERC, we can help you with that. So another useful tool for finding and downloading demographic data is Social Explorer. And an advantage to Social Explorer is that in addition to US Census Bureau data, you can visualize data from many other sources. So if we have a question about something like COVID data, we can also get that from the same source. And Social Explorer is also a bit more user-friendly, but unlike the US Census data platform, it is not free. So you may not have access to it after graduation. And for our research question, let's say we're continuing with our kind of COVID analysis, and maybe we want to compare data on COVID death rates to the percentage of the population that's elderly. We know that COVID death rates are pretty high for the elderly population, and maybe that's something that we want to visualize for a research project. So to access Social Explorer, we'll start by going to the Columbia Library's website, so clio.columbia.edu. And here I'll search Social Explorer. And it's this first result, Social Explorer electronic resource. And I'll click on this search database link. So now you can start using Social Explorer. It says professional plan provided by Columbia. If you want to save your work, you'll need to make an account, but we won't do that now. And the main window of Social Explorer shows many different data sets that you can visualize on a map. So on the left side, you can see that we're in this Explore Maps tab. There are also tables, and we'll get to that later. Under geodata, you can download geographic data sets in the form of shapefiles, like those, similar to those tiger line boundaries that we talked about. And this first option here directs you to United States data. But if you scroll down, you can see that there are also various other data sets. There's environmental data, health data, and there's also some data on other countries. But we'll go back to this first option and click Explore. So similar to the mapping tool in the census data platform, this opens a customizable map, and this window in the top left corner shows the variable that's currently being depicted up here in bold. Underneath, we can see the geography level and the way that it's being visualized. And on the bottom right-hand side, this gives the legend. And it also shows it gives some options for the classification method, again, how the data is broken up into categories. So to change the variable being displayed, I'll click on Change Data, this blue button. And you can see there's a very long list of themes and variables that we could look at. And looking at this list of years, if you click Show All Years, you can see that Social Explorer has data going back all the way to 1790. And of course, that will depend on the variable you're looking at, whether the data has the year 1790, but it's an option. But for now, we'll keep 2020 as the year. So I'll click Show Fewer Years. And for our variable, we're going to be looking at age. And we'll look at total population more than 65 years to be looking at older people and the effects of COVID. So now if I close this window, it's generated this map, and hovering over some of these states, there's a pop-up that tells you the percentage of population that's over 65, and then also the raw numbers and the total. So maybe we want some more granular detail. So instead of visualizing this by state, I'll click the drop down and change this to county. So you can notice that the patterns change a bit and there's some more granular detail. So under color palette, getting this drop down, if you click the three bars here, more options. Oh, sorry. This drop down on the visualization type, we can change the color palette, and editing the cut points will also, just like this window here, will change the categories that the data is broken up into. So to download some of this data, we'll now click on the three bars over here and click on Create Report. So first we have to select the area that we want data for. And on this Create a Report window, I'll keep the source. This is what we're looking for, 2025 year estimates. And then for the topic, I'm going to change it to age. And now I'll select on the map exactly where I'm looking for. And I'm going to choose the state of Maine here, which has, the state of Maine has one of the highest percentages of population over 65 in the country. So this selection, you might remember, is pretty similar to the Census Bureau website, but it's a bit easier to work with in Social Explorer. So I'll click on polygon selection here. And now I'll just click to start drawing a shape that encompasses all the counties in Maine and double click to finish it. So now they show up orange because they're selected. And now I've got the 16 counties in Maine all listed here. And I'll click Create to make the table. So here we've got the table. You can see all the geography levels we wanted are here. And to download this, you can download it as an Excel file, or in the data download tab, you can get it as a CSV. So the CSV is ideal for bringing this into GIS or another data analysis software, as it has less formatting. So in the data download tab, click on the download link that says county data over here under download data by geography type. Okay, so it's downloaded. This time it's just one file, so there's no need to unzip it. And similar to last time, we have this GeoID, and scrolling over to the right, we have the variables here. And this time we don't have the definitions underneath. So Social Explorer has a different file that you have to download at the bottom here, and it's this data dictionary. So I'll download that as well. And this opens as a text file, which again tells you exactly what each different variable is. Okay, so another option is going straight to the data tables in Social Explorer without working with a map at all. So I'll close the Create Report window, and this brings us right back to the tables. So here I can create a data table again, and I'll click on the American Community Survey, which is what we had before with that drop down. And I'll click the most recent one and choose Begin Report. So choosing the geographies in the table can be a bit confusing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the census geographies. So census geographies are arranged in this hierarchy. And this image here gives a pretty nice breakdown of the different geography levels. So at the top, the largest level within the United States, of course, is nation. And breaking that down more, there's regions, then divisions, and then we have states, counties, and then census tracts, block groups, and census blocks. So these three are some geographies that come up pretty often when you're looking at census data. So I have it blown up a little bit more here for some clarification. So census tract over here is the largest of these. And then you can see that this portion of the census tract is known as a block group. And then even smaller than a block group is an individual block. So these geography levels get pretty fine grained, but one disadvantage to be aware of when using smaller geography levels is that you can have more missing data for privacy concerns because people might be more easily identified. And going back to this image, so the lines here represent geography levels that have a relationship. So for example, within the nation, there are zip codes. Within the nation, there are regions and all of these different geographies here. And then you also have a breakdown of urban areas and core-based statistical areas. And then the light gray lines also show you that all of these break down into census blocks. But something to be aware of is that not all of these geographies nest within each other. So for example, if I'm looking at places, this places usually represents cities. There's not a line from census tracts to places. So I can't get census tracts within places. So that could be pretty important if you're looking for a city, for example. You might need to find the counties that are encompassed within the city to get census tracts within there. Any questions about the census geographies so far? Okay.
One thing to just add, I guess, is if you're ever working with like the codes, notice how like the state has like a 0 in front of it, or that the block group actually doesn't have zeros in front of it. So even though this image is shown in this way, most of the time you'll either have it one or the other, where it'll be, if it's a number, you'll just see like the number, like 1. If it's represented as text, you'll usually have the zeros in front of it. And usually you want those zeros in front of them, because if they get combined, the ideal way is, the reason you have the zeros is so that all the geofibs or geoIDs add up to the same length. So if you don't have those zeros, some of them might be 1 digit because it's just 1. Some of them might be like 23, so there might be 2 digits, and that would mess up the matching if both your data sets don't contain it in the same way. So oftentimes it's best if it's in text, and then you'll be able to match. If it's not, then you want to convert everything to a number, and then just in Excel combine the cells to recreate this like FIPS code so that you're able to use it.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and I actually didn't go over this image yet, so thank you. So this FIPS code, like Fatima was saying, is another name for the GeoID that we've been seeing in all these spreadsheets. So the different parts of this, it begins with the state, a code for the state, and then there's a code for the county, and the tracts, the census tract, and the block group. And this one doesn't go all the way down to blocks, but it could have a number for the block as well. I'll go back to one of the files we downloaded. So here in this file from Social Explorer, you can see that it has the GeoFIPS, and it also has the individual breakdowns of the state ID. So the state is 23 for Maine. And then the county ID, which is 001. And it doesn't go further than that here because we were just looking at counties, but we have the options here for all the other different geography levels that there could be. So that's why there's all these blank spaces here. Okay, so we'll go back to Social Explorer. And again, we're selecting a geography type here. Another important thing to remember when you're selecting the geographies for an area of interest is you want to start with the smallest geography level within the total area of study. And here in Social Explorer, these dots represent nested levels similar to the lines in that image we were looking at. So for this table, let's take a look at this time COVID rates, and let's say we're looking at rent burden as COVID-related unemployment exacerbated and created new rent burden for many families. So we'll get data on census block groups right now in San Francisco and San Mateo County in California. And like I said, a block group is a subdivision of a census tract. So for the geography level, I'll click on 150 block group. And now I have to select a state, which is California. And then I'll find San Francisco County. And now I can select an individual census tract in San Francisco County, but I want all of them. So I'll click on this all block groups in San Francisco County and click add.
Can I ask a question here?
Yes.
So when you go to like the original, like select a type of geography,
Mhm.
like the first option, yeah, geographic type, is there a difference? Like, I feel like I see county showing up in a lot of places. Like, is there a difference in thinking county when it's under place versus when it's under state?
Oh, thank you for the question. I believe so that some geography types can be listed multiple times because different surveys would use a slightly different boundary.
I think it might actually be the same county, like the county, the division might be the same. The difference might just be that like, it's nested in that way for you to see how they fit within each other. So like county fits within state, but then place also fits within state, but place is bigger than county. So county fits within place.
So it's also like how you get there.
Yeah, which is like, if you were to go back to the slide for a second, like that visual. Yes, a notice. Oh, I guess it doesn't show a line for,
It goes from places.
oh, it goes to
census
place, but it
blocks.
doesn't show the line to county. But yeah, in a similar, sort of similar concept, how a lot of them have those lines going down to census blocks, it's like that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a different like hierarchy.
Oh.
But should be the same geography, I think. The only difference is, the only place where there is like a geographical difference in things that sound the same is zip codes and zip code tabulation area.
Okay.
Those are actually a little bit different.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're getting our block groups for California and for San Francisco County and for San Mateo County. So I've added all the block groups in San Francisco County. All the block groups within all the census tracts because I didn't select a census tract. So next I'll choose San Mateo County. And this selection actually stays even when I change the dropdown because I added it to the current geography selections. So now I can double click block groups to add it here. That's another way of adding it. And now I have San Francisco County and San Mateo County. So now we can click proceed to tables and it has us choose the different census tables that we're looking for. So we will be looking for the residents paying more than 30% or at least 50% of income on rent, which gives information about rent burden, which is a bit further down. Here it is. Oh. No, sorry, B118.002, this one. Okay, so I'll click add and then show results. And from here, we can download the data the same way as before. Okay, does anybody have any questions about using Social Explorer? Okay, so if you're looking for data specifically about New York City, the city actually has its own census data platform, which we'll take a look at briefly because it doesn't always work. But to find it, you go to popfactfinder.planning.nyc.gov. Okay, great, it's loading. So this website has the different geography levels within the city of New York. Right now it's showing census tracts, as you can see. You can also use neighborhood tabulation areas. So these are approximate boundaries of the New York City neighborhoods. And we also have options for community districts, census blocks, and the boroughs and the entire city. And a really useful thing about this website is that you can select a particular study area and compare that to the city as a whole, or to a specific borough or to another area that you're interested in. So if you have some really specific question about like Midtown or about Harlem, you can select these different neighborhood tabulation areas and compare them to see how they are, like how they compare to the average, if they're higher or lower or about average. So we won't go through downloading here, but any other questions about what we've covered so far? Okay, so we're going to move on to finding historic census data. So let's keep thinking with the COVID and age question. So maybe we want to know how the older populations were distributed across the US in the last few decades to see what the effects of COVID are in context. And so a useful website for finding historical census data is the National Historical GIS website from IPUMS at the University of Minnesota. So unlike Social Explorer, which we saw also has some historical data, NHGIS is free. So to find it, we'll open a new window or a new tab and go to IPUMS, which is IPUMS.org. And the main website has a lot of different data options, actually. There's some international data, some health data, and this one, which we're looking for, which is NHGIS. So we'll click on Visit Site. And now we'll choose Get Data. So here we download data by creating a set of filters, pretty similar to the US Census Bureau data portal. So first we're going to click on geography levels. And we're going to get states. So I'll click the plus sign and click submit. And now it shows all of the tables for states in the United States. So of course, there's a lot of those, about 40,000. So we're going to narrow this down a little bit. So we'll choose topics and then age. I'll click the plus sign here and click submit. So now there's fewer options, but we have these 10,000 tables that talk about age and 183 time series tables. So time series tables are a really useful feature that link data from the same topic for multiple years. And the first one here gives age of children and adults, and the years run from 1970 to 2020. So I will click the plus sign next to this one to add it to our data cart. And then I'll click continue. And click continue again to get to the download page. And here is where we can download the data. Since we have a time series table here, there's a few options for how to format the time series table. You can have different files for each of the years, or you can change it by columns, and we'll just keep the default here. So now you would click submit, and, oh, yes.
I'm sorry, I think I can't find
When you click
The NHGIS.
Yeah.
So I started at ipums.org. And it's this green square in the center.
In the table, I put state and age,
Uh-huh.
and then I didn't know where to click. Sorry.
Yeah, I have the same one.
Okay, I'll go back.
Yeah, the person's, that one didn't, I couldn't find.
So are you under time series
Got it.
tables? Okay.
We're not there.
So when I click submit on the data download, it brings you to this login page. So we don't actually have to go through the download here because you would need to create an account, but it's pretty quick and easy. And after you create an account, you would, it would tell you that it'll take this long to download the data, and then it will be saved to your account. The account is free. All right, so, and while it doesn't say so on that page, the data download will include a metadata file.
Is this also, does it come with GeoIDs?
Yes. Okay, does anybody have any other questions about this website or finding historical census data? Okay. And next I'll talk a little bit about finding international census data. So you may have wondered about how to find population data for other countries. And the US Census website actually has data from other countries' statistical offices that is available to download. So we'll go to census.gov. And under the Surveys and Programs tab, I'll go to International Programs. And now, right here on the right-hand column, International Database. It's a little bit buried in here. Now I have to click on this link within the text, International Database. So this brings you to a data dashboard, and the first thing that comes up is world data dashboard of the entire world. And you can also select different countries, select a particular country or a region. And in the tables, you can download data tables about demographic information about different countries. So for the report, we have the demographic overview option. There's also these different reports, which are like thematic options. So different collections of variables based on a particular theme. So if I click on migration, then it will show you migration rates. And you can also select a custom group of columns. So this could be really helpful for looking at specific countries and finding some simple demographic data, and also looking at how it's changed over time, because you can select years or a specific range of years. So that can be really helpful. To download this, you can find the download button, this little down arrow in the top left. And you have a CSV or an Excel option, so I'll choose CSV. So here it gives you the country code and the country name, the year, which is, it's all 2022 because we didn't choose another year, and then the variable that you were looking for. So really simple layout here, no metadata file, but the column names are pretty clear. And another useful tool, I just clicked back to the international database link. Under this methodology paragraph, it has a link to the national statistical offices of other countries. And this is actually really, really helpful if you scroll down here. So it lists every country in the world and the link to their national statistical office. So you can go to one of these links and explore in more depth the statistical offices for a country that you're looking at in particular. They may be in different languages, and also sometimes the links can be broken, as is the case for this one. But a lot of them are pretty updated, and you can use that to find individual countries' censuses or particular data. Any questions about this website or finding international data? Okay, so that's all the content for this workshop today. If you have a few minutes, you could try coming up with your own research question to find some data for using some of these websites, or if you have a research question that you've already been working on, you could use these sites to try to collect some data for it for a few minutes.
Or do you have any questions?
Yeah.
On Social Explorer, when you're looking at the options for census data, and there's a redistricting data, do you happen to know what that is?
I am actually not super clear on the difference between that, but does anybody else know about it?
Yeah, when you go to decennial, and it's for every year, when you go to decennial census, and there's a redistricting data versus I guess
What
for
does that
2020.
contain?
Yeah, what is redistricting data versus regular census data?
I actually don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were asking about the shape files changing over time. Is that redistricting? It's related to that. Basically, the census tracts, they're formed based on trying to create roughly, I forgot what the population you said at the beginning was, but the census tracts ideally would have a certain population. So if a census tract starts to have too many people by the next census, then what they'll do is split that up into two. Or if one now has much less people, they'll combine two that are next to each other. So maybe it's related to that. Not 100% sure. Is it there for every year, or it's just for the most recent one?
It's there for 2010 and
Every time.
because it's providing population counts to use in redrawing congressional districts, but when I read that, I was I don't know why that's different than just the census.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll look into it.
All right, any other questions?
Not a question, but I thought the historical data of it was really interesting. I didn't know there was so much documentation available. So around with that.
Yeah, no problem. And also, through Clio, you also have free access to Ancestry. So if you search Ancestry in the Clio databases, you can look specifically at like the pages of the census records from years going back to like the 1700s.
I have mine project for the evening.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I'll stop the Zoom. Fina, do you have any questions before I close out the Zoom? Okay, thank you for coming.
Maddie.
Yeah.